Myla is a pioneer in economic and community development, philanthropy, innovation, based in Birmingham, but really a leader throughout the South and even nationally, I would say, just given your work everywhere. So it's a real delight, actually, to have her come here. And actually, she'll tell you later, but she's off to bigger and better things as we go. So this was a real coup for us to have her come.
Things are changing.
So let's start with the innovation ecosystem in Alabama and the South. And so, Myla, you are surrounded by innovation leaders here, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, in Thomasville, Albany, with so much innovation. Tell us a little bit about what you think are the key ingredients for fostering innovation, not just in Alabama, but throughout the South.
So thank you for the invitation, and I'm really happy to be here. I met Stephanie walking in, and Debra and I have been talking for some time. Jamal, we met this morning, but I'm really happy to be here because I am not a practitioner. I am a facilitator. Right? You all are practitioners. And when I think about what makes innovation possible, I think about things like grit and courage and comfort with the what if and comfort with the not now. Qualities in people that cause them to see possibility. That as I sit from the chair that I sat in previously, as a funder, those were the things that were captivating for me, and I think those are the qualities that can make innovation in places where innovation is not normally seen possible. It is the human characteristic. As much as anything else. Now, you have to have the technical skills, but you can acquire those things. It is the human characteristic around what being an agent of change means that makes the work that you do vibrant for the communities you serve.
And you mentioned that you're not necessarily a practitioner, but you are very much the facilitator of making things happen on the ground. And that's why we love your work. So can you tell us a little bit about like a particular project that you're proud of?
Yeah. This is going to sound, it's sort of was a change of philosophy. So I am previously with Alabama Power, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Southern Company, sister company to Georgia Power. I came into that company to lead its foundation, which in Alabama was the largest corporate foundation in the state. So it's a market mover, right? When Alabama Power gave money, it kind of was the good housekeeping seal of approval, and others would then follow suit, and there would be follow-on capital. And one of the things when I came into the company and came into the role, I sort of said, how much money have we given away over the life of this foundation? And we did the calculation, and it was like $250 million. And I went into a foundation board meeting, and I said, does anybody know where it went and what happened because of it? Did anything change? I mean, because we suck at educational outcomes, we suck at healthcare outcomes. I didn't say those words like that because I was new and it was the foundation. I mean, these were, but what would it have looked like had we said we're gonna lean hard into this one sector and try to make change in a meaningful way there? Because that is, in fact, a lot of money to have deployed over a period of time. But also, I wanted our organization to think about what catalytic investment looked like, which is different than simple grant making, which is really the work that you all are doing, which is saying, if I drop this bit of money into a for-profit entity, if I make them a program-related investment loan of some sort so that they can create commercial viability on a block in Thomasville, what does that do to the rest of the activity on the street? and how can that change? And so we developed a program related investment model inside of Alabama Power, and then we invited other funders in the state to come with us on this journey of having people come and pitch to us so that we could collaborate in terms of our giving, but also think about our dollars differently. Not that there is ever anything wrong with a direct grant, because there's not. But if you're thinking about community engagement and community development, sometimes you have to deploy your capital in a different way. And that was, I would say, one of the things that was most exciting to do, because it was, it wasn't like I invented that concept, but it was not something that had been done very much, if at all, in Alabama.
I love how that became a catalytic spark
Yeah.
for larger economic development, but really place-based focus in terms of what the needs are
Right.
at that locality.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned, your service at the Alabama Power Foundation. And so much of that story articulates the need to build coalitions. So we think at the Partnership for Inclusive Innovation that, your traditional innovator, or what was seen as an innovator, is very limited, and that actually there are many ways to innovate and be innovators. So in this room, you have representatives from local government, you have startup founders, you have researchers, you have people that are more civic leaders working in the community. So a whole host of expertise coming together, because we think only by bringing public-private partnerships and creating different levels of experience and expertise can you really spark that place-based innovation from the ground up. So tell us a little bit about how you've built those coalitions from your role from Alabama Power.
Yeah, so and again, I think the advantage, if I had one, in coming into Alabama Power in the way that I did, was that I was late coming in. I was mid-career, so I had a whole network of people who were out in the world grinding, right? And I knew them. And, it was easy enough to sort of build that just because, I was proximate to the work. My previous, I've had several iterations of employment, I guess, but I'm an urban renewal lawyer. That's how I started out. So I knew how communities work. I also knew the challenges that were real and human based and dependent upon trust. And that takes time. Sometimes people who are funders don't understand that affecting change really isn't a function of money, it's a function of trust and time. And being able to sort of leverage that was helpful. I think.
Yeah, this trust-based philanthropy that you talk about is very much inherent to our work too, in terms of how we think about, what is the problem in the community, or what is the goal that the community is trying to achieve, and let's start there, and then think about the portfolio of tools that could come, some of which is financial capital, some of which is innovation and technologies, some of which might be research-based in terms of R&D. But what is that portfolio of tools that is most applicable to addressing the problem or the goal?
Right. And sometimes I think my experience was when people would come seeking support, the answer was not always a grant of money. It was, here is access to technical assistance. We are in a constrained environment. So one of the things we did, for example, is we just hired a grant writer to make that grant writer available to our nonprofit community so that they could apply for EDA grants. Because they didn't have the money to do that. They didn't have the finance, and then we would provide the back end legal support for that. So there were all kinds of things that we could do that would be helpful to affecting both financial results, but also showing them, okay, here are best practices and here are relationships and partnerships that you may need to be successful. You know, if you're trying to start a workforce development project, but you or program and you are serving a community that has childcare needs, let me introduce you to this quality childcare provider so that you all can partner, because then your grant application is stronger. And we would see that, and then we would know that. But I want to kind of hit on the whole trust-based approach, because that's it's going to sound like I'm talking out of two different sides of my mouth, I think, in some sense, and I'm not. But one of the things that is critically important, and part of why it's really great that you all are here, is the investment is not just in what you all are doing. The investment is in you as leaders to do that work. It is saying you are competent and capable and visionary, and we believe in your leadership to accomplish your mission. We will help you make sure your mission is strong, but you as a leader, that's the secret sauce that will make the project that you're trying to achieve work. And that's a big deal. And when you're a good leader like that, what that means for a funder is you're only going to ask funders whose goals align with yours. You are less inclined to just chase the dollar. You're more inclined to figure out who are the right funders for my mission, because for every mission there is a right funder, and not every funder is right for every mission. And the notion of trust-based philanthropy really leans heavily into that.
And the relationships
Yes,
that are
absolutely.
built in terms of the long term versus
Absolutely.
just the, impact that needs to happen
right.
to meet the quarterly return.
That's
or
right.
The financial return.
And that is from a corporate standpoint, that is not custom. That's not the custom. But I think as corporate leaders begin to think about true impact as they want it to be, they are coming to understand that as a value.
Yeah, and I know we talk a little bit about funding, but some of these larger points that we've mentioned is even social capital.
Right.
So how do you actually couple that financial capital in terms of that grant with the social capital, as in, I trust you to do this, I'm validating this project. Tell us more about how you've been able to do that from that end.
And we talked about that a little bit this morning. It's, having someone vouch for you, not just in life, that can make such a difference in terms of access and opportunity. And one of the things that we think about, and I still say we, even though I'm no longer with Alabama Power, but one of the things that we Southern writ large think about is, what are the values to our relationships that can really create capacity and access for our partners who are trying to do good work. And it is who are the people that I can introduce you to that can make a difference for you in your thinking and in your access and in your your capacity to affect the change you want to see. And that is, by and large, in life, as valuable as anything.
We actually saw a little bit of that since we've been doing this longer in our community research portfolio. So we have seeded at this point 24 communities and research teams throughout the state with seed grants to actually implement multidisciplinary community research projects, from transportation to housing to energy. And just with that little seed grant, that vouching actually got them to be successful in getting bigger federal national grants.
Right.
To the point where 25% of our portfolio of that get on to these bigger grants.
Right.
And we have heard from NSF and federal funders thank us for giving them a pipeline of projects, because they know if we at the partnership vouch for them and guarantee that these are solid projects, they are more likely to
be successful. Yeah.
No, and so this is what we think about for these leaders program too, in terms of trying to really push forward on, dynamic creative individuals, but also knowing that they are part of a team, part of a region, and be connected to other like-minded, similar innovators from other places to produce that larger growth across the board.
Yeah, and I think this convening is so important because it allows these teams to really kind of talk among themselves and figure out, like, okay, here's my pain point. How did you deal with this? How did you solve it?
Yeah, no, and so now onto the pain points, actually, that the challenges of being an innovator in the South.
Right.
Where do you see that, and how do we best address that?
Well, that's many. There's
Conversation.
honest conversation. I mean, so the South, I've spent my whole life in the South, pretty much, right? So, yeah, there are challenges. There are challenges here. Some of it is just overcoming perception and self-doubt. I would say all of the time, one of the things that's been fascinating for me, and I didn't grow up in Birmingham, but one of the things I have always loved is when people would come to Birmingham and be like, whoa, this isn't what we thought at all. It doesn't look like what they thought. I mean, it's hilly and verdant, and there's really great food and great music and cool people, all of the things that no one thinks about when they think about Alabama. And we have this sort of collective low self-esteem. I think it probably migrates throughout the South around who we are and what we have to offer. But we are the seed of so much that is innovative that we can offer the world. And so to some extent, being discounted can be the competitive advantage because you can produce under the radar in a way where there is zero pressure around what the outcome could be. Right. And so I would say let that be the fuel for the excellence that is already there.
I love that. When we started the partnership as part of the task force that the state of Georgia put together, one of the things that we saw was that Georgia and the larger extent the South, because of their humble nature, because they're too busy, because they just are doing things, they don't promote themselves enough. They don't celebrate their work. One, there's actually such a rich tapestry of innovators and innovation that's happening, but it doesn't get recognized to the fullest extent. And how do we, as a partnership, but also collectively celebrate this more, and how do we acknowledge the work that's already been happening against challenging conditions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with that, though, the challenges, let's talk a little bit about your personal journey.
Yeah.
Because it's been a zigzag a little bit.
It's been a little bit of a zig and a zag. So Stephanie and I were talking. I am a lawyer by training. I thought I was going to do trust and estate work. I mean, and I did for a while. Actually, I know. The intersection of death and money.
There are lawyers in the room, right?
Yeah, death and money. It's like not that much fun. I did that for a number of years, actually, and worked in the trust department at SunTrust, which I guess as a bank, it was then Trust Company Bank, then SunTrust, and I don't even know what it is now. But did that for a couple of years, or 3 or 4 years, and then came out of the workforce and raised children. When I went back into practice, I found and fell in love with urban renewal work. And my goal always had been that I wanted to do work that would create a place that my children might consider living. So sort of the North Star. I wanted to be a part of work that would create places that my children could consider living. Didn't mean they have to live there, but it would be a place. It would be that kind of work. So I did that for a number of years in private practice. When my kids started, really kind of got into the meat of middle school, I went into heavy industry with a ductile iron pipe manufacturing company, the heart, soul, and core of American manufacturing. Okay, I learned a lot in that space. That was a huge a huge learning curve for how Birmingham was built, really. And, the puts and takes of really race dynamics, even through the construct of how industries are built. I then moved into an economic development organization where I was their general counsel, but also led public policy and regional development. So creating collaborative spaces, but also pushing through legislation. And that was a learning curve too. If anybody has spent any time with legislative bodies, it's that's
specialty.
That's yes, yeah. And from there came over to Alabama Power to lead the foundation, which, as I mentioned, was a real important role for the state. Right in the middle of the pandemic, I moved from leading the foundation to lead the Birmingham division of the company, which was the company's largest geographic division, and it's most complex just in terms of the nature of the industries and customers we serve. And as of last week sometime, I am now the president and CEO of an entity called Propel Education, which is an organization funded by Southern Company and Apple to be an education disruptor. It's an organization I've been involved with for, I guess 6 years or so. But I'm really honored to now have the opportunity, as I say, at the sort of the last. This is the last
You
career
say that.
turn. Well, I think this actually may be it. But it's this is a passion project, but it is one that I think will have wild implications for how we consider student learnings K through 12, but also with a focus on HBCU learners and their opportunities beyond college. So I think 2 days into this now, but pretty pumped about the opportunity that it represents.
Well, first of all, congratulations on this role. It's a testament to your experience and leadership that, the board selected you.
Thank you
for this very great honor. And really, it puts you into the thick of this larger narrative that, we've been talking about in terms of innovation, education, and that intersectionality. With all this work, being a change maker, being an inclusive innovation leader is hard work. It's a heavy weight to carry. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you have to make tough decisions. Sometimes you have to decide what you can and cannot do, ultimately. So talk to us about these difficult decisions that you have to make day in and day out as you continue your North Star.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I had in my life struggled with is, the notion of perfection and the elusiveness of that, and sort of like how I can get paralyzed if I just don't get it. If I make a mistake, it could take me down. I could lay out. I've had that happen, and that is just not helpful. We all have to make choices around how we use our time and our resources. And just because you make a choice doesn't mean that the thing that did not get chosen is without value. It's just you had to make a choice. And it doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be discarded. I'm moving into an organization now that has a lot of resources, a lot of wind in its sails, but it doesn't have the navigation right where it needs to be. So that means that there are some things that we may be doing that we need to pause. There may be some things that we need to shed. There may be things that we need to lean full into, or new things that we need to pick up. I'm going to do the best I can every day with that. I'm going to every day wake up and be committed to whatever my, the mission is. And I'm going to offer myself the grace that I ask, of others. 2 nights ago, I looked at my phone in the middle of the night, which is a problem, and we'll talk about that later. But there was a quote that popped up, and it was this: trust your gut, forgive yourself, and be grateful. Now just think, if you do those 3 things every day, just think about that. Trust your gut, forgive yourself, and be grateful. You've got a lot worked out. And that's what I think, that's what I am going to try to do. Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Forgive yourself. That's the hard one. That's the hard one. That's the one we have to work on.
And be grateful.
And be grateful.
I love it. Those are really 3 words of wisdom, phrases of wisdom of this. And it really does kind of make you think about how, even at the partnership, our work is really trying to train future innovators with your type of profile, right? Because we have half of our portfolio is next generation innovators, where we place early career professionals in public-private sectors. So it's a rotation. So you learn a little bit from the private sector, you learn a little bit in the public sector, but you're gaining subject matter expertise in that particular industry, but you're learning how to build collaboration in culture and trying to understand these different agendas and these different kind of industries and finding a way forward to do that. And you, without the partnership or joining one of our fellows, were able to do that in your journey and really be a testament to how you can be pointing towards that North Star regardless. So those are really wise words for us to think about as we think about just our path respectively as an organization, but also each of these regions thinking about where they're going.
I think, the way that you all are building the model, you don't want a whole room full of people who have the same experience or who all agree on everything, because then somebody's unnecessary, right? You have to have a perspective that is different to get the best outcomes. Even if there are periods of discomfort created because of that. I recently had an experience where my view on a particular subject was completely out of sync with 2 of my colleagues. And we ended up having a meeting with our CEO, and he was just not happy that we didn't have, we didn't come with a united front and an agreement, which we should have. We should have worked it out among ourselves. But the point is, everyone had perspective that was valid and valuable, so that inevitably we were able to get to the right outcome or the best outcome for the enterprise. And we can't do that if we are tentative about the validity of our perspective and sharing it with others. I don't, if you just need agreement, then again, maybe I'm not the right person to have in the conversation.
Well, I think that is very wise words, especially since this group has these name cards and they have their Clifton strengths. Mm-hmm. So everyone will start to kind of see the dynamics of each other's strengths and kind of have conversations throughout the next 2 days about that as they work on building teams and whatnot. So those are good things to look at. I know our team did it very early on. And I think we still use it to this day in terms of how we navigate difficult conversations or uncomfortable conversations to get to our North Star. So we have less than 10 minutes. I want to open this up for the audience Q&A. But before I do that, I'll just ask one more question and then start thinking about questions that you want to ask Myla on this, because obviously you can tell she's a real gem in terms of words of wisdom. But what are your final thoughts in terms of future innovators and, the path forward? How can we work smarter together as a region, knowing that we are regional innovators in our own right? We have a lot to do. And sometimes we're so focused on all the things that we have to do ourselves. How do we have the time, the energy, the resources to think, larger and think more about holistically what we need to do collectively?
I remember years ago, and this will sound, I don't know if it will relate as you intend, but I remember being with someone, an older woman, who said, you are spending so much time doing that you're not spending enough time being. And I think there is such wisdom in that. I think that we are often so trapped by our tasks lists or our to-do lists or our device list or our projects, our tactics, that we don't take the time to reflect. Before we had access to the wonders that have made so much of convening possible, especially and usefully, that's not really a word, but in useful ways during the pandemic. It is important to disconnect from things and sit with yourself and think. Sit with yourself and think. Sit with yourself and reflect. Clear your mind to let so that you can be restored. And I would say, with that, there's a lot you can bring then back to how you look at the project that's before you, and it becomes the tactics then have meaning. I am reminded of a project that had a really detailed statement of work, and that was very good, except it never really hit what the objectives of the project were. It was just a lot of, it was this milestone and that milestone. So I would say all of this to say the value of having that reflective time is you can then look at your building blocks and know pretty quickly whether they are aligned with what you're trying to get accomplished in the first place.
All right, I'm going to open this up for questions. Any questions? And if you ask a question, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tina McKnight with the Albany team. And my question to you is, you talked about making those difficult decisions and sometimes having to say no, but what motivates you to say yes, especially when you have so many options around?
Yeah. I think my passion meeting meeting proximity, right? If in the space of in my funding capacity, it would be those two things. If someone has both the passion and vision and the proximity to achieve what the goal is, those are the things that would motivate me to say yes. I'm always drawn to people who are committed and have conviction around what they're trying to accomplish. I am also drawn to people who want to get there. So I always try to take time to be, because people did that for me, I remember very vividly an occasion when I was completely out of my zone and was, in some sense, inappropriate. And there was a woman who pulled me aside and said, I know you don't mean this way, but this is what it looks like. Someone needs to tell people that, right? That is a loving thing to do. When you are incorrect, somebody needs to tell you. So I would say that went a little bit far afield, but that's an important thing to do, and everybody can do that for someone else.
Any other questions? Hey, Katie Chastain, I'm with Team Thomasville, and you both talked some about the importance of collaboration and coalition building, and I'm just curious, in the effective teams you've seen, and then in some of the ineffective teams you've seen, what the differences are, and if there's certain personality or even just habits of mind that are that inhibit teams from being effective.
I think a couple of things. I think things tend to be harder than people think. All right. I think, and that's not I'm not saying that in a negative way. I just think often when the work that we do is solving hard, entrenched problems, and that takes time. So that time is a function of trust. And trust is a long-term thing. And so even in team building, there has to be trust. And I think it's important when establishing teams to go into it and say, however ugly we think this is going to get, it's probably going to get even worse. But I trust you. I trust your motives. I trust your drive. I trust your investment in this North Star, this vision we have. And so even when it gets ugly, even if I have to take a break and come out of it for a minute, I trust you as I ask you to trust me to get this work done. And I think that is what can make the difference between teams. There has to be trust.
Any questions on this side? No one?
Team Kentucky.
Yeah.
How about I got you calling people out. Calling people out.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm with Team Kentucky. This is Kayla. She is also with Team Kentucky, and we are at large Team Kentucky, Tennessee.
Team Kentucky Services.
My question is kind of half-formed because I was still thinking of it when you called this out. So forgive me if I kind of ramble through this. As somebody who's on a senior leadership team still relatively early in her career, how do you recommend balancing this acknowledgement that I don't have as much experience as other folks in the room, but that my convictions and my beliefs are still just as important? And I don't know, what do you kind of recommend when approaching a group conversation like that with kind of those, Kayla's going to ask.
Kayla.
And how do you show your value as a young lady?
So I'm going to tell you this because there are a couple of things you should know. I'm a natural introvert with extroverted tendencies who's always felt like she was an imposter in the room. That's the truth of who I am. But there was a reason I got invited in the room. And I had to believe in that, even when I didn't believe in myself. So I'm going to say this to you. I will believe in you until you're ready to believe in yourself. And the day will come, and you'll be ready. But trust, there's a reason you're in the room. Get in the mirror and tell yourself what you need to. They invited you there for a reason.
You were ready. That was a great question. Myla, thank you.
Thank you.
Those were exceptional words of wisdom.